Lieutenant Rebecca Hayes wasn't supposed to be a hero that day. She was just a mother trying to save her baby. The evacuation shuttle rattled and screamed as enemy missiles tore through the sky above Vedris Prime. Alarms blared from every direction. Red emergency lights painted everything in blood. "Come on," Rebecca whispered, her fingers flying across the damaged control panel. Behind her, in the tiny emergency pod, her 9-month-old son Daniel wouldn't stop crying. She couldn't blame him. The pod's life support system was dying, sparks shooting from the cracked display screen. Rebecca had been a colonial defense pilot for 8 years. She'd flown through asteroid fields and survived 3 combat missions. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for this moment. The Keshtar invasion fleet had appeared without warning, dropping out of hyperspace like locusts. Within 2 hours, Vedris Prime was burning. The evacuation had turned into a massacre. Her shuttle took another hit. The hull breach alarm added its voice to the chaos. Rebecca looked at the navigation screen and felt her heart sink into her stomach. They were losing altitude fast. The main thrusters were gone. In maybe 3 minutes, they'd be nothing but a crater on the planet's surface. She looked back at Daniel. His tiny face was red from crying, his little fists waving in the air. He had his father's eyes. His father who died 2 months ago defending another colony. Daniel was all she had left. All that mattered in the entire universe. Rebecca made a choice that would haunt her forever. She overrode every safety protocol in the system. Her hands shook as she programmed the emergency pod's ejection sequence. The computer screamed warnings at her. Pods weren't meant to be launched inside atmosphere. The survival rate was maybe 15%. But 15% was better than 0. "Mom's got you, baby," Rebecca said, her voice cracking. She reached through the pod's opening and touched Daniel's cheek one last time. "Mom's got you. You're going to be okay. You're going to live. I promise you're going to live." She sealed the pod. Tears blurred her vision as she aimed it away from the battle, toward the massive mountain range in the distance. The Crimson Peaks. Nobody lived there. The terrain was too hostile, too volcanic, too deadly. But maybe, just maybe, the automated distress beacon would bring help before. Rebecca didn't let herself finish that thought. She slammed her fist on the launch button. The pod shot away from the shuttle like a bullet. Rebecca watched it disappear into the smoke and fire, getting smaller and smaller until she couldn't see it anymore. Then an explosion rocked her shuttle and everything went dark. The emergency pod screamed through the atmosphere, its heat shields glowing white-hot. Inside, Daniel cried and cried, terrified by the noise and the shaking. The pod's primitive AI did its best, adjusting angle and deploying emergency chutes, but it was designed for space deployment, not atmospheric entry. The pod hit the ground hard in a valley between 2 volcanic peaks. The impact cracked the hull open like an egg. The distress beacon flickered twice, damaged beyond repair, then died completely. Silence fell over the valley, broken only by a baby's frightened cries. Daniel lay in the wreckage, unhurt but alone. The valley was black volcanic rock as far as the eye could see. Strange purple plants grew in patches, and the air shimmered with heat. Steam rose from cracks in the ground. No rescue ship would ever think to search here. No rescue ship could survive landing here. Above, the sky darkened. Something massive blocked out the red sun. Ashera descended on wings that stretched 50 meters across. The void drake was ancient beyond human understanding, her scales the color of midnight with hints of deep purple. Her eyes glowed like molten gold. She landed with surprising gentleness for something so enormous, her claws barely making a sound on the stone. She'd heard the pod's brief distress signal before it died. Curiosity had drawn her to investigate. Now she stared down at the crying infant with an expression that might have been confusion or wonder. Ashara's mate, Corvin, landed beside her with far less grace. He was larger, his scales darker, his temperament more suspicious. "A human hatchling," he growled in the deep, resonant language of drakes. "Leave it. Their kind brings nothing but destruction. They war with the Keshtar and both species poison whatever they touch." But Ashera couldn't look away from the baby. Daniel had stopped crying and was staring up at her with wide, fearful eyes. He should have been screaming. Any creature with sense would flee from a void drake. But this tiny human just watched her, vulnerable and helpless and somehow trusting. Ashera possessed something most species had forgotten existed. The drakes called it the Great Memory. Every drake carried genetic memories from their ancestors going back thousands of years. In those ancient memories, Ashera could see humanity as they once were, primitive, struggling but possessing something rare. Adaptability. Resilience. The ability to survive anything. She also remembered the prophecies her grandmother had whispered. Tales of a bridge child who would come in fire. Neither Drake nor another species but somehow both. A child who would change the fate of many worlds when the darkness returned. "This one is mine," Ashera declared. She reached down with claws that could crush stone and so gently lifted Daniel from the wreckage. "You're mad," Corvin hissed. "The flight will never accept this." "The flight will accept my decision," Ashera said firmly. She cradled the human infant against her chest, her body heat warming him. "I name him Ember for he came to us in fire and metal. He is Drake now and I will raise him as my own." Corvin stared at his mate for a long moment, then spread his wings and took off without another word. Ashera watched him go, then looked down at the baby in her arms. Daniel had stopped crying completely. He reached up with one tiny hand and touched her scales, his fingers barely spanning a single plate of her armor. "Welcome to the flight, little Ember," Ashera whispered. "You have much to learn." She launched herself into the air, powerful wings carrying them both toward the hidden nest in the highest peaks. Behind them, the wreckage of the pod began to cool, and all evidence of humanity's presence in the valley disappeared beneath falling ash. In space above the planet, Rebecca Hayes regained consciousness in a rescue ship. Her first word was a scream of her son's name. But the rescuers had no answers. They'd found no pod, no signal, no trace. As far as anyone could tell, Daniel Hayes had vanished into the deadliest wilderness on Vedris Prime. Rebecca wept and screamed and refused to believe he was gone. But eventually, when the colony evacuation was complete and the survivors limped towards safer space, she had no choice but to leave. The Crimson Peaks kept their secrets, and Daniel was officially listed as lost. Neither mother knew that her son was alive and sleeping peacefully in a nest of Drake young, surrounded by warmth and the low rumble of alien lullabies. Neither knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would reshape the galaxy. The abandonment was complete. The raising was about to begin. 16 years changed everything. The helpless baby became something the galaxy had never seen before. Ember stood at the edge of a cliff, staring out at the landscape he called home. The Crimson Peaks stretched in every direction, jagged mountains of black and red stone that glowed in the light of the setting sun. Volcanic vents released streams of steam into the purple sky. Most species would call this place a nightmare. Ember called it beautiful. He wore clothes made from tan Drake hide, stitched together by his own hands. His body was lean and hard from years of climbing mountains and hunting across impossible terrain. His hair was long and tied back with leather cord. Scars covered his arms and chest, each one a lesson learned the hard way. "Little Flame, you're daydreaming again," a voice rumbled behind him. Ember turned and grinned at Thresh, his Drake brother. Thresh was almost fully grown now, his scales a deep bronze color that caught the light. His wings were massive, strong enough to carry him across entire mountain ranges without rest. "Just thinking," Ember said in the Drake language. It came as naturally to him as breathing now. Sometimes he had to remind himself that he'd once made different sounds, baby sounds, in a language he couldn't remember. "Thinking won't help you in the hunt," Thresh said, but his tone was friendly. "Mother says we leave at dawn. The ridge beasts have been spotted near the eastern valleys. If we're lucky we'll feast for a week." Ember's grin widened. "If we're lucky I'll reach the kill before you do." Thresh snorted flames in amusement. "You can't fly, Groundwalker. How do you expect to beat me?" "The same way I always do. I'll show you tomorrow." That night, Ember sat with his family around the nest fire. Ashera was there, her massive form coiled protectively around her young. Corvin lay nearby, finally accepting after all these years that Ember truly was part of the flight. 4 other young Drakes clustered together, Ember's siblings in every way that mattered. "Tell us the story," one of the youngest Drakes, a female named Pyra, begged. "Tell us about the sky battle again." Ember had heard this story 100 times, but he never got tired of it. Ashera began speaking in the deep, musical way of Drake storytellers. "Long ago, before any of you were hatched, the Void Drakes were numerous. We flew between the stars themselves, guardians of the ancient balance. Other species looked to us for wisdom and protection. But the Council of Seven grew jealous of our influence." Corvin took up the tale. "They commanded us to destroy an entire species. The Valari people had done nothing wrong except advance too quickly, learn too much. The Council feared them. They ordered us to burn their worlds. But we refused," Ashera continued. "We said no species had the right to judge another's worthiness to exist. The Council named us traitors. They sent armies against us. For 100 years they hunted us. They destroyed our nesting grounds. They killed our elders. By the end, only scattered flights remained, hiding in places like this where others fear to go. Ember listened with the same intensity he always did. This story wasn't just history. It was a warning. The Council of Seven still ruled the galaxy from the shadows, manipulating species into conflict, maintaining their power through fear and control. Will they come here? Pyra asked nervously. They believe we're extinct, Corvin said. As long as we stay hidden, we're safe. But Ember saw the look Ashera gave him. A look that said his time of hiding was running out. The hunt began at dawn. 6 young drakes and 1 human set out across the volcanic wasteland. The ridge beasts were massive creatures, each one the size of a small house, with armored hides and tempers to match. Hunting them was dangerous even for drakes. Thresh and the others took to the air, their wings carrying them high above the terrain. Ember watched them go, feeling the familiar pang of longing. He would never fly. That was simply reality. But he'd learned to do other things instead. He ran. Ember had learned every trick of movement the harsh environment could teach. He knew which rocks would hold his weight and which would crumble. He knew how to leap between thermal vents using the rising heat to extend his jumps. He knew how to read the land, to see the paths invisible to flying creatures. While his siblings circled overhead searching for prey, Ember moved through a canyon system, following tracks only he could spot. His human eyes saw details differently than Drake eyes. His smaller size let him move through spaces they couldn't enter. He found the ridge beast herd first. Ember climbed silently up a rock face and positioned himself above the largest male. His spear was strapped to his back, a weapon he'd crafted himself from volcanic glass and drake bone. The drakes preferred to use claws and fire. Ember had to be more creative. He waited. Patience was something Ashera had drilled into him from childhood. The hunter who rushes becomes the hunted, she always said. When the moment came, Ember moved. He dropped from his perch, spear extended, and drove the point into the precise spot behind the ridge beast's skull where the armor plates met. The creature died instantly, never knowing what hit it. Thresh arrived minutes later, landing in a shower of ash and small stones. He stared at Ember standing atop the kill, then threw back his head and laughed in the roaring way of drakes. You're impossible, Groundwalker. Completely impossible. That night's feast was glorious. The entire flight gathered to celebrate the successful hunt. Ember sat beside Ashera, gnawing meat from a bone while his siblings boasted about their own near kills and close calls. But afterward, when the others had settled to sleep, Ashera led Ember away from the nest. They walked in silence to a place he'd never seen before, a cave entrance sealed with stones. It's time you knew the full truth, Ashera said quietly. Time you understood what you are and where you came from. She moved the stones aside with her claws, revealing a passage into darkness. Ember followed her down into the earth, his heart pounding. They descended for what felt like hours until they reached a vast chamber lit by glowing crystals. The Archive. Ember had heard whispers about this place but never seen it. Memory crystals covered the walls, thousands of them, each one containing recorded history from the Void Drake's long existence. Ashera touched one with her claw, and suddenly the air filled with images. Ember saw starships, space stations, humans in uniform fighting desperate battles. He saw worlds burning and evacuations and chaos. Then he saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. A woman's face, young and frightened, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was speaking, but Ember couldn't understand the words at first. Then Ashera touched another crystal and translation came. Mom's got you, baby. Mom's got you. You're going to be okay. You're going to live. The woman reached through an opening and touched something beyond the image's frame. Baby. Ember suddenly understood he was watching his own story. Her name was Rebecca Hayes, Ashera said softly. A lieutenant in the Colonial Defense Fleet. Your birth mother. She launched your pod to save you during the evacuation of Vedris Prime. She believed you died. The galaxy believes you died. Ember watched the recording play out. Watched the pod eject. Watched the desperate love in Rebecca's eyes. His chest felt tight, emotions he couldn't name swirling inside him. Why show me this now? He finally asked. Because your birth people are dying, Ashera said. The Keshtar Dominion pushes them to extinction. Earth itself faces blockade. And behind it all, the Council of Seven pulls strings, testing humanity to see if they possess the same qualities that made the Council try to eliminate us. She showed him more images. Human colonies burning. Fleets destroyed. Refugees scattered across hostile space. His people fighting and losing against impossible odds. I raised you as Drake, Ashera continued. Taught you our ways, our philosophy, our strength. But you are also human, Ember. You carry both heritages in your blood. The prophecy spoke of a bridge child who would unite what was divided. I believe that child is you. Ember looked at his hands, human hands that had learned to do things no human had done before. He thought of Thresh and Pyra and Corvin. He thought of the woman on the recording, Rebecca, who'd given everything to save him. I don't want to choose between them, Ember said quietly. You don't have to, Ashera replied. You are both. That's your strength, little flame. But if you want to help your birth people, you'll need more than strength. You'll need a companion worthy of the task. She led him deeper into the archive, to a chamber he'd never imagined existed. And there, sleeping in the darkness, was something that would change everything. The sepulchre made Ember feel small in a way nothing else ever had. The chamber stretched so far into darkness that even the glowing crystals couldn't reach the walls. But what dominated the space, what made his breath catch and his heart pound, was the giant sleeping in the center. Titangard was the size of a mountain. Actually, it was bigger than most mountains Ember had climbed. 3 kilometers of living metal and organic tissue, scales that shimmered between midnight black and steel gray, armor plating that looked grown rather than built. Massive arms ending in claws that could probably cradle a spaceship. Legs like pillars holding up the world. And a face, if you could call it that, with closed eyes the size of houses. What is it? Ember whispered, his voice tiny in the vast space. A Colossus, Corvin answered. The old Drake had followed them down, his usual gruffness replaced by something like reverence. The greatest achievement of our people, created before the Council turned against us. We grew them, Ember. Combined our essence with protomatter, the building blocks of reality itself. The Colossi were designed to protect worlds, to guard the innocent, to stand against any threat. Ashera moved closer to the sleeping giant, her own considerable size dwarfed by the Titan. They're not truly machines and not truly alive. Something in between. Each one has a consciousness, a personality, a soul if you believe in such things. But they can only awaken for someone special. Someone who carries the wisdom of drakes and the will of another species. Ember understood suddenly why she'd brought him here. You think I can wake it up? I know you can, Ashera said. The question is whether you're ready for what that means. Bonding with a Colossus isn't like taming a pet or befriending a creature. You merge with it, Ember. Your mind touches something ancient and powerful. It will test you in ways you can't imagine. Many have tried and failed. The failure usually drives them mad or kills them. Usually? Ember tried to smile but his face felt frozen. Always, Corvin corrected bluntly. Every attempt we know of has ended in death. But you're different. You're the bridge child. If anyone can succeed, it's you. Ember walked slowly toward Titangard. Each step echoed in the massive chamber. He placed his hand against the Colossus's foot, and even that small part was bigger than he was. The surface felt warm, almost alive, with a texture somewhere between stone and skin. How do I start? He asked. There's a neural chamber at the base of the skull, Ashera said. You enter it and the bonding begins. But Ember, listen to me carefully. The Colossus will show you things. Offer you things. It needs to know what kind of person you truly are before it accepts you. You must be honest even when honesty is painful. You must be strong even when strength seems impossible. And you must remember who you are and what you fight for. Ember nodded slowly. He thought about Rebecca, his birth mother, making an impossible choice to save him. He thought about Ashera, making an equally impossible choice to raise him. Both women had risked everything for him. Maybe it was time he risked everything for others. I'm ready, he said. The climb up Titangard's body took an hour. Ember used the gaps between armor plates like handholds, pulling himself up the sleeping giant one grip at a time. His muscles burned. His hands ached. But he didn't stop. The neural chamber was exactly where Ashera said it would be, a small opening at the base of the skull, barely large enough for a human to squeeze through. Ember pulled himself inside and found a space that immediately felt wrong. The walls pulsed with light, organic and technological patterns swirling together. In the center was something like a throne, covered in neural filaments that moved like living vines. Ember sat down. The filaments immediately wrapped around him, gentle but firm, connecting to his temples, his spine, his chest. He felt a moment of panic, then everything changed. His consciousness exploded outward. Suddenly he wasn't just Ember anymore. He was vast, ancient, powerful beyond comprehension. He could feel every system in Titangard's body, weapons that could level cities, shields that could protect millions, the ability to fold space itself and step between worlds. The power was intoxicating. Then the testing began. The first vision slammed into him like a physical blow. Ember stood on a burning world, watching humans flee from Keshtar soldiers. The soldiers weren't just killing people. They were hunting them, making them suffer, laughing while they did it. Rage burned in Ember's chest, hot and pure. A voice whispered in his mind, ancient and cold. You have the power to stop this. To make them pay. To crush every Keshtar under your heel until they know fear like your people know fear. Take vengeance. Make them suffer. The vision changed. Ember stood as Titan Guard, towering over a Keshtar city. One step would destroy thousands. One blast would erase them from existence. The power was right there, waiting for him to use it. No, Ember said through gritted teeth. That's not justice. That's just more killing. More pain. The cycle never ends that way. The vision shattered. The second test was worse. Ember saw Earth surrounded by Council warships. Saw his mother, Rebecca, older now, standing with refugees as bombs fell from the sky. He had the power to save her, to save everyone, but only if he agreed to serve the Council. Only if he used Titan Guard as a weapon of oppression instead of protection. She's your mother, the voice whispered. The woman who gave you life. All you have to do is obey. One life of service in exchange for saving billions. Isn't that worth it? Ember's hands shook. He could see Rebecca's face so clearly now. Could imagine meeting her, talking to her, being her son again. All he had to do was surrender. Accept that the strong rule the weak. Accept that some lives matter more than others. No, he whispered. She didn't save me so I could become a tyrant. She saved me so I could live free. That's the gift I have to give back. Freedom, not slavery. The vision crumbled. The third test was the cruelest. Ember stood alone in darkness, and the voice told him the truth he didn't want to hear. You will fail. The Council is too strong, too ancient, too entrenched. You're one person with one Colossus against forces that have ruled for thousands of years. Everyone you try to save will die because of your arrogance. Your birth mother will die knowing her son threw away his life for nothing. Your Drake family will be hunted and destroyed because they helped you. All that suffering, all that death because you thought you could make a difference. This time Ember didn't answer immediately. The doubt felt real because it was real. He was one person. The odds were impossible. He probably would fail. But then he remembered something Ashera had taught him during his first hunt. Courage isn't the absence of fear, little flame. Courage is doing what's right even when you're terrified. Even when failure seems certain. Because some things matter more than safety. I might fail, Ember said to the darkness. Probably will fail. But I have to try. Not because I think I'm special or destined or chosen. But because doing nothing while people suffer is worse than dying while trying to help them. I'd rather fail fighting for something good than succeed by becoming something evil. The darkness exploded into light. Ember gasped, suddenly back in the neural chamber. But he wasn't alone anymore. He could feel another presence in his mind, vast and ancient but somehow gentle. I am Titan Guard, a voice resonated through his entire being. For 3,000 years I have slept, waiting for one worthy of partnership. You passed the trials, Bridge Child. Not because you're strong or clever or destined. But because when offered power you chose restraint. When offered revenge you chose mercy. When offered certainty, you chose hope despite doubt. Does that mean you'll help me? Ember asked. No, Titan Guard said, and Ember's heart sank. Then the voice continued, it means we'll help each other. You need my strength to protect those you love. I need your wisdom to remember why that strength exists. We are bonded now, you and I. Partners until the end. Ember felt the connection settle into place. Deeper than thought, more fundamental than blood. Through Titan Guard's senses, he could suddenly perceive the entire sepulchre, could feel Ashera and Corvin waiting anxiously far below. Could sense the systems coming online throughout the Colossus's massive body. Titan Guard's eyes opened. Light blazed from them, brilliant as captured stars. The giant moved for the first time in millennia, and the entire mountain shook. Ember guided their shared body, stood up, felt the overwhelming power now at his command. But it didn't corrupt him. It didn't make him drunk with possibility. Because he'd already faced those temptations and refused them. This power wasn't his to use however he wanted. It was his to use for the purpose both he and Titan Guard agreed on. Protection. Not domination. They emerged from the sepulchre together, a human and a mountain walking as one. The other drakes stared in awe and fear. Ashara's eyes glowed with pride. Little flame, she said softly, you've done something I wasn't sure was possible. We have to go, Ember said, his voice coming from both his body and Titan Guard systems. My people are dying. I can't hide here anymore while they suffer. I know, Ashera said. But Ember, remember this. You go not as a conqueror but as a guardian. Keep that distinction clear or the power you carry will destroy you. Ember nodded. Through Titanguard systems, he activated technology that hadn't been used in thousands of years. Space itself began to fold, creating a portal that would carry them to human space. When you need us, Ashera called as the portal opened, we'll come. Then Ember and Titanguard stepped through, and the Crimson Peaks fell silent behind them. The Bridge Child was going to war. But not the kind of war the galaxy expected. Admiral Thomas Grant had seen a lot of impossible things in 30 years of military service. He'd watched colonies burn. He'd seen fleets torn apart. He'd survived battles that should have killed everyone involved. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared him for what stepped out of that portal above New Harmony. The battle had been going badly for 6 hours. 37 human ships against 200 Keshtar warships. Grant's fleet was down to 23 operational vessels, and those were barely holding together. The UHMS Defiance, his flagship, had hull breaches on 3 decks. They'd lost over 4,000 people already. "Sir, we've got a spatial anomaly," Lieutenant Kelly Chin shouted from sensors. Her voice cracked with exhaustion. "Something's opening a jump portal inside the combat zone." "That's not possible, sir. The gravitational forces would tear anything apart." "Today seems to be full of impossible things," Grant muttered. "Get me visual." The portal opened like a tear in reality itself, swirling colors that hurt to look at. And through it stepped something from legend or nightmare depending on your perspective. The thing was 3 kilometers tall. Grant had to process that number twice because his brain refused to accept it. 3,000 meters of living armor and weapon systems and raw power. It moved with grace that nothing that size should possess, each step deliberate and careful despite the earthquakes it should have caused. Every gun in the system went silent. Humans and Keshtar alike stopped firing, stopped moving, stopped breathing. You didn't keep fighting when a god showed up to the battlefield. "This is Ember Ashara-born, pilot of Titanguard." A voice broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. Young voice, male, speaking perfect standard with an accent nobody could place. "I'm ordering an immediate ceasefire and parley. No more fighting. No more dying. Not today." Grant found his voice first. "Identify yourself properly. What's your allegiance? What fleet do you represent?" "I represent the people who are tired of watching species destroy each other for no good reason," Ember replied. "I'm human by birth, Drake by raising, and pilot of the last active Colossus. That's all the identification you need." The Keshtar response came from Warlord Vincent Thorne, commanding the enemy fleet from his massive dreadnought. His voice was harsh, mechanical, filtered through translation software. "You command a weapon of the extinct Drakes. Impressive. Surrender it to the Dominion immediately, or we'll destroy every human ship in this system as punishment for your arrogance." Grant watched his tactical display, waiting to see what this Ember person would do. Part of him hoped for a miracle. Most of him expected disappointment. He got the miracle. Titanguard moved faster than something that size had any right to move. One moment it stood still. The next, it positioned itself directly between the 2 fleets. Its arms raised and energy screens erupted outward, enveloping every single human vessel in protective barriers that glowed like captured auroras. The Keshtar fleet opened fire immediately. Hundreds of weapons, enough firepower to crack a moon, slammed into those barriers. The light show was incredible. The sound was deafening even through the vacuum of space, transmitted through the ship's hulls. The barriers didn't even flicker. "I said ceasefire," Ember's voice came again, still calm, still patient. "I wasn't asking. I was telling you." Then Titanguard's hand extended toward the Keshtar flagship. Energy beams lanced out, precise as surgical tools. Grant watched his tactical display in amazement as those beams disabled every weapon system on Warlord Thorne's ship without touching life support, engines, or crew quarters. 30 seconds of careful, controlled power that left the massive dreadnought helpless but intact. "Now," Ember said, "we're going to talk. Admiral Grant, Warlord Thorne, I'm transmitting coordinates for a neutral station. Meet me there in 2 hours. Bring whoever you want. Bring weapons if it makes you feel better. But we're going to have a conversation about why this war is stupid and how we're going to end it." Grant looked at his communications officer. "Did he just call our war stupid?" "Yes, sir. He did." "Huh." Grant almost smiled. "I think I like him already." 2 hours later, Grant sat across a conference table from a kid who couldn't be older than 20. Ember wore armor made from something that looked like Drake's scales, dark and iridescent. His hair was long and tied back. Scars covered his visible skin. But his eyes were what caught Grant's attention. Old eyes. Eyes that had seen too much. Warlord Thorn sat at the other end of the table, his armored bulk making the chair look like a child's toy. The Keshtar were reptilian, with scaled skin and multiple eyes that tracked movement independently. Thorn radiated hostility like heat from a fire. "Talk fast, human," Thorn growled. "My patience has limits." "Good, I'll be brief," Ember said. He placed a data chip on the table. "Everything on this chip is from Void Drake archives. Historical records going back thousands of years. It proves that the Council of Seven has been manipulating galactic politics to maintain their power. They create conflicts between species to keep everyone else weak and divided." Grant picked up the chip, skeptical. "And you expect us to believe that our entire war is manufactured?" "Not entirely manufactured," Ember said. "The Keshtar's homeworld really is dying. That part's true. But the Council made it die. Environmental weapons deployed subtly over decades. Then they offered Warlord Thorn a solution: wipe out humanity and take their worlds. Kill one species to save another." Thorn's claws scraped against the table. "Lies. The Council are our allies." "The Council don't have allies," Ember replied calmly. "They have tools. And when tools break or become inconvenient, they throw them away. You've been used, Warlord. Your entire species has been used. And once you've weakened humanity enough, the Council will turn on you too. They can't risk either species becoming strong enough to challenge them." Grant studied the young man carefully. "Let's say I believe you. Why should I trust you? You show up out of nowhere with a superweapon, claim to know ancient secrets, and expect us to just take your word for everything." "You shouldn't trust me," Ember said simply. "You should verify everything I'm telling you. Check the data. Investigate the claims. But while you're doing that, stop killing each other. Because every ship destroyed, every person who dies, that's exactly what the Council wants." "And what do you want?" Thorn demanded. Ember met the Warlord's multiple eyes without flinching. "I want to save Kesh Prime. Your homeworld. Titan Guard has technology that can reverse environmental damage, restore ecosystems, make your planet livable again. I'll do it for free, no strings attached, no demands for surrender or tribute. Just let me help." The room went completely silent. Grant couldn't believe what he'd just heard. Thorn looked equally stunned. "Why?" the Warlord finally asked. "Why would you help us? We've killed thousands of your people." "Because you were desperate," Ember said quietly. "Because you were trying to save your children, your families, your entire civilization. I can't blame you for that. I can only try to give you a better option than genocide." Grant leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. "You said your last name was Asharaborn. But you mentioned being human by birth. What's your real name?" "Your human name?" "Hayes," Ember said. "My birth mother was Rebecca Hayes. She was a colonial defense pilot who died 20 years ago saving me during an evacuation. At least, that's what I thought until today." Grant's coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. "Rebecca Hayes? You know her?" Ember's composure cracked for the first time, hope flooding his face. "She's my sister-in-law," Grant said slowly. "She's alive, kid. She survived the evacuation. She's been living on New Portland Colony, searching for any record of your pod for 20 years. She never gave up believing you were alive somewhere." Ember stood up so fast his chair fell over. His hands shook. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "She's alive? My mother's alive." "Very much so," Grant said, feeling his own eyes get wet. "And she's going to lose her mind when she finds out her son came back riding a walking mountain." Warlord Thorn watched this exchange with his multiple eyes blinking in what might have been confusion or respect. Finally he spoke. "I will bring your proposal to the Dominion Council. If you can truly save Kesh Prime, if this isn't some elaborate trick, then perhaps we can discuss terms. But understand this, Ember Hayes. If you're lying, if this is a trap, I will hunt you across every world in the galaxy." "Fair enough," Ember said, still looking shaken by the news about his mother. "I'll prove it. Give me coordinates for Kesh Prime. Titan Guard and I will begin restoration work immediately. You can send observers, scientists, anyone you want to verify it's real." 3 weeks later, Grant stood on the observation deck of a neutral science vessel in orbit above Kesh Prime. Beside him, Warlord Thorn watched the planet below with all his eyes. The transformation was impossible to deny. Dead zones turned green. Toxic atmosphere cleared. Water systems purified themselves. Titan Guard worked tirelessly, using technology nobody understood to heal a dying world. "He's actually doing it," Thorn said quietly. He's saving my people and asking nothing in return. Yeah, Grant agreed. He is. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Thorn was silent for a long time. Then he straightened to his full height. I'm going to call a ceasefire. The Dominion Council will resist, but I'll make them see reason. This war benefits no one except those who profit from our suffering. Grant extended his hand. Welcome to the rebellion, Warlord. Thorn looked at the human gesture, then carefully clasped Grant's hand with his clawed one. Welcome indeed. On the planet below, Ember worked with Titan Guard, unaware that he'd just accomplished something the Council of Seven had spent millennia preventing. He'd gotten enemies to become allies. And that would change everything. 3 months of fragile peace ended with 7 ships dropping out of hyperspace above Earth. Not just any ships. These were dreadnoughts from the Council of Seven, vessels so old they'd been built before most current civilizations even existed. Each one was a mobile fortress bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Thomas Grant stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the tactical display with a sinking feeling in his gut. Around him, the combined human Keshtar defense fleet scrambled into formation. 3 months ago, seeing human and Keshtar ships flying together would have been unthinkable. Now it was their only hope. Where's Ember? Grant demanded. Inbound from Kesh Prime, Lieutenant Chin reported. ETA 15 minutes. Sir, the Council ships are broadcasting. A voice filled every speaker in the fleet, ancient and cold as the void between stars. Attention primitive species. You possess stolen technology. You forge alliances contrary to established order. Surrender the Colossus and its pilot immediately. Comply and you will be permitted restricted survival. Refuse and face complete extinction. Grant opened a channel. This is Admiral Grant of the United Human Naval Service. We don't recognize your authority to make demands. Leave our space immediately. The response was laughter, harsh and mocking. You are children playing with fire. We are the Council of Seven, architects of galactic civilization. We have eliminated species for lesser offenses than yours. Your defiance is noted and will be answered appropriately. Then Ember's voice cut through the channel, calm but carrying an edge of anger. Your civilization is built on mass graves. I've seen the records. 43 species extinct because they wouldn't bow to you. Hundreds more kept deliberately primitive. You don't maintain order. You maintain your own power. The bridge child speaks, the council voice said. How disappointing that potential was wasted on sentiment. No matter. You will be eliminated along with your foolish allies. The council fleet opened fire. Grant had seen devastating bombardments before. This was different. These weren't just weapons. They were instruments of absolute destruction, refined over millennia. The first volley tore through the outer defensive line like it wasn't there. 12 ships vanished in explosions that lit up space like newborn stars. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Grant shouted. Get those civilians evacuated from Earth. Now. Then Titan Guard arrived, dropping out of a jump portal with Ember at the controls. The Colossus immediately positioned itself in front of the planet, arms spread wide, generating shields that covered the entire orbital zone. Council weapons slammed into those shields. For a moment they held. Then cracks appeared. Ember, they're too strong. Grant transmitted. You need to fall back. No, Ember's voice came back, strained with effort. I fall back, Earth dies. Everyone dies. That's not happening. Through the view screen, Grant watched Titan Guard engage 3 dreadnoughts simultaneously. The Colossus moved like a dancer despite its size, dodging, weaving, generating barriers to protect damaged ships. But it was fighting defensively, trying to shield others rather than strike killing blows. Why isn't he fighting back? Warlord Thorn demanded over the comm. His own ship, the Crimson Talon, fired everything it had at the nearest council vessel. He has the power to destroy them. Because that's not who he is, Grant realized. He's trying to protect us without becoming what they are. He's trying to prove there's a better way. But better ways didn't stop extinction-level weapons. Grant watched helplessly as Council fire systematically dismantled the defense fleet. 20 ships gone. 30. The Keshtar fought with desperate courage. Humans threw themselves at impossible odds. Nothing mattered. They were losing. Then the sky split open. Jump portals erupted across the system, over 100 of them opening simultaneously. Through them came creatures Grant had only seen in ancient records. Void drakes, massive and beautiful and absolutely terrifying. They flew through vacuum like it was air, their scales reflecting starlight, their eyes glowing with power. At their head flew Ashera, larger than the rest, her voice booming across all frequencies. You hunted us for centuries, Council. Drove us to the edge of extinction for the crime of showing mercy. Now we return that mercy to others. Stand down or face what you've always feared. The tide of battle shifted instantly. Drakes weren't just powerful, they were smart. They coordinated with the fleet, using their natural abilities to disrupt Council weapons, to generate fields that protected Allied ships. They fought with the precision of beings who'd battled for thousands of years. But Ember knew military victory wasn't enough. The Council would just return with more ships, more weapons. This had to end differently. Titan Guard, he said to his bonded partner, can you amplify a broadcast across the entire galaxy? Every inhabited world simultaneously? With the Drake's psychic assistance, yes. But it will drain us completely. We'll be defenseless. Do it anyway. Ember opened his mind, and the Drakes joined their power to his. Titan Guard took that combined psychic energy and amplified it 1 billion times over, creating a quantum broadcast that touched every conscious mind in the galaxy at once. Ember transmitted everything. The full historical archives from the Void Drake memory vaults. Proof of the Council's crimes across millennia. Evidence of manipulation, genocide, enforced stagnation. Every secret, every lie, every atrocity laid bare for all to see. Billions of beings across thousands of worlds learned the truth in a single instant. The Council's dreadnoughts suddenly found themselves illuminated by the attention of an entire galaxy. Their crews, themselves from species the Council had conquered, began transmitting messages of their own. Mutinies erupted across all 7 ships. Systems went offline. Weapons powered down. You've doomed yourselves, the Overseer's voice hissed one last time. We will return. We will make you pay for this revelation. Maybe, Ember replied, exhausted but unbowed. But now everyone knows what you are. You can't hide anymore. You can't manipulate from shadows. Whatever you do next, the whole galaxy will be watching. The Council's leaders escaped in personal vessels, abandoning their crews and their ships. Their power structure collapsed in hours as species across the galaxy rose up against their local oppressors. 2 weeks after the battle, Ember stood outside a small house on New Portland Colony. His hands shook. Titan Guard waited in orbit, giving him privacy for this moment. Admiral Grant stood beside him. You want me to go in first? Break the news gently? No, Ember said. I need to do this. He knocked on the door. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Rebecca Hayes looked older than in the recording, her hair touched with gray, her face lined with years of grief. She stared at Ember for a long moment, not recognizing him. Can I help you? She asked politely. Mom, Ember said, his voice cracking. It's me. It's Daniel. Rebecca's eyes went wide. Her hand flew to her mouth. She looked at Grant, who nodded confirmation, then back at Ember. Her knees buckled, and Ember caught her, holding his mother for the first time in 20 years. You're alive, she whispered, crying into his shoulder. My baby's alive. I never stopped looking. Never stopped hoping. I know, Mom. I know. I'm sorry it took so long to come home. They stood there for a long time, mother and son reunited against impossible odds. When Rebecca finally pulled back, she studied Ember's face, touching his scars gently. What happened to you? Where were you? It's a long story, Ember said. And there's someone I want you to meet. Someone who saved me when you couldn't. He led Rebecca outside as Ashera descended from the sky, landing carefully in the clearing. The Void Drake lowered her massive head to Rebecca's level. I am Ashera, the Drake said in perfect human standard. I found your son when he was dying. I raised him as my own. He is both your child and mine. Rebecca stared at the enormous creature, processing this impossible situation. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She stepped forward and placed her hand on Ashara's snout. Thank you, Rebecca said simply. Thank you for giving him life when I thought I'd lost him forever. Ashara's eyes glowed warm. He gave me purpose in return. Your son is extraordinary, Rebecca Hayes. He carries both our worlds in his heart. 6 months later, the first Galactic Assembly met on neutral ground. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered voluntarily, creating a new order built on cooperation rather than domination. They offered Ember leadership positions, titles, power. He refused everything. I'm not a politician, Ember told the assembly. I'm not a king or president or any kind of ruler. But I'll be a guardian. Anyone from any species who wants to learn what the Void Drakes taught me, who wants to protect rather than conquer, can come train with us. The Guardian Order was born that day. Volunteers came from dozens of species, each one tested and trained in the Drake philosophy. Other colossi were awakened, bonded with worthy pilots from across the galaxy. They established watching posts, not to control but to shield. Ember stood with Titan Guard at the edge of Earth's solar system, watching the first class of new Guardians train in the distance. His mother lived in a house nearby now, dividing her time between her human family and her extended Drake family. Ashera visited often, and the two mothers had become unlikely friends. "What do you see out there?" Titan Guard asked through their bond. Ember thought about the question. He saw human and Keshtar children playing together on colony worlds. He saw species that had been enemies for generations learning to cooperate. He saw the Council's remnants scattered and powerless, hunted by the very people they'd once oppressed. He saw his birth mother and his Drake mother working together to teach new Guardians. He saw Thresh and his other Drake siblings flying patrol routes with human and Keshtar partners. He saw Admiral Grant and Warlord Thorn planning joint defense strategies over shared meals. He saw a galaxy learning that strength didn't have to mean domination. That power could protect instead of destroy. That differences didn't have to lead to war. "Hope," Ember said finally. "I see hope. And possibility. And proof that one person choosing to do the right thing can change everything." "You were abandoned as an infant," Titan Guard observed. "Left to die in a hostile wilderness." "I was," Ember agreed. "But I was also saved. Twice. By two mothers who loved me enough to make impossible choices. And that love, that sacrifice, that's what I'm passing forward. That's what being a Guardian means." In the distance, a new Colossus awakened, bonded with a young Keshtar pilot who'd lost her family in the war. She was learning what Ember had learned, that power without compassion was just tyranny with a different name. The bridge child had come home. Not to one species or one world but to all of them. The abandoned baby had become the guardian of a new age, proof that even in the darkest moments, even when hope seemed impossible, love could change the fate of civilizations. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be.